Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Social Litmus Test, where we put things to the test so you don't have to. I'm Pete.
And I'm Blake.
Welcome back, folks. It's been a while.
Yep.
But we're doing it live. Shout out to our boy Bill O'Reilly, as we were talking about right before we started the cast. Today's episode is inspired by true events. Some stuff that's been going on, more particularly in my social circle / familial circles. Everyone's having babies. Something that we all do. Babies, try it once, you're hooked.
Yep.
It's more addictive than heroin.
That's what I've heard.
That's what I've heard too.
Yeah.
It's a very fun process making a baby.
That's what the episode is about, right? Making a baby?
It's straight making a baby. We're
Okay.
actually going to have mannequins. We invested thousands of dollars
Yes.
into silicone-based, very high-tech things, and we'll show you the exact process.
The methodology.
You know what? We might save that for the
That's the behind the paywall.
The paywall
Yeah,
one.
we're gonna have
we'll have it.
Patreon.
It'll be weird, but like for our super fans, you'll enjoy
Yeah.
it. So yes, as you guys may know, we are at a stage of our lives where we're prime, not us, but the women in our lives are childbearing ages, primo stuff.
Yep.
The ages I think of, between 25 to 35 is pretty much the 10 years that, it's just something evolutionarily in you.
Oh, yeah.
That you're
Innate.
just like, right? What would you just say?
Innate.
Innate, yes, innate. I thought it was a little bit more vulgar than that. And primal wants to start a family.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what the podcast is going to be about today. We're going to be talking about factors that have influenced us having children, that prevent us from having children, and just what's going on around us. But we do want to stick to our outline because we're trying to get better at that. and I think that every week we are getting a little bit better.
Yeah. I think we're getting better at just writing down an outline, just kind of understanding what that outline is, what the concept of the episode is going to be. But we need tangents. We need those.
Yes, because this. I mean, it's not I'm having a brain fart here. Geometry class.
Oh.
I was gonna say geography class. I mean, I think you still need
just
some.
as boring.
You need units of measurements and tangents to do geography too. I'm sure. And I also want to address one thing. This was uncoordinated. The orange shirt fiasco of 2023. Completely. I mean, is it fall themed? I don't know. Maybe. If you guys can't see around this place,
it's
but
falled out.
It's fallen from the sky and landed in this apartment.
Yes.
It's an autismal apartment right now.
My girlfriend does not skip the $1 decoration at Home Goods.
I mean, God bless it.
And the 17 others.
I mean, $1 in this economy is just great. It's
but it looks great in here.
It looks great.
So.
It smells great, and I'm craving a pumpkin spice latte.
Yes.
Even an Oktoberfest beer. That right? I haven't had one of those in a while.
Or a pumpkin spice beer.
I'd rather eat a foot.
Yeah.
But again, we're gonna reel it back in here like some good old fishermen, and we're gonna start our first topic. Blake, first topic.
Well, basically, kind of what we're just straight off of the intro is just starting a family in the modern world, and we have seen a lot of our friends and family have babies. Don't really want to go into specifics, but there's a lot of people around me. Call them out.
Call them out just by name, by looking them in the face.
But coworkers, family. The funny thing is that they have a baby, and then they're like, "Man, I'm really tired, and I'm just exhausted all the time." And
I have no
this
money.
baby's like now sick, and I gotta go do that. And then I'm like, "That sounds great. Let's do it." You know what I mean? Like, it's weird how that works out because I don't know. Maybe because I think what it is, honestly, it's literally biology. It's hormones, but I think what it also is that when you kind of get to 25, 30, 35, you've kind of hopefully made it to like a certain standard of your own life. Like you're like, this is kind of where I'm going to peak in terms of performance, if you will, efficiency, not at baby making, but performance at work in general in life. Like you kind of know what you're doing, and you think you're going to be pretty much that way probably till you're like 70. But what I'm saying is that what is the next step? You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do now? Like, yeah, you're going to get promoted. You're going to make more money. But you're relatively kind of maintaining that same level of stress, workload, everything else kind of just is maintaining. So like, what else is there to do? Well, obviously make some babies and make them better than you.
Well, that's the goal. That's the number one goal. You always want to, as I think, for me, not to get into the personal parts of it, because that's at the end of it.
Yeah.
But I do want to just add that, you always want your kids a little bit better than you got set up for.
Yeah.
And, but then at the same time, it's like, Ricky Gervais has like a stand-up special about it. And he's like, he doesn't want to have kids. Like they're like, him and his wife are, at that stage where they're like too old to have kids. He's like, if I had a kid, he would just become an opioid addict and then just overdose at, 30 years old, not doing anything with his life because he grew up being a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want somewhere between, destitute and that.
Yeah.
Like,
there was someone who said, I want to, like, with my children, this is just them speaking, they said, with my children, I want to be right on the cusp of abuse, because you want them to learn hardships and understand where the dollar, like the value of money,
of course,
all this stuff. And I thought that was such a great quote, because it makes sense. Like, you want to be like right there. Because that baby, that kid cannot know how good life is when you have just millions of dollars. Well, you know what I mean?
Well, that's a Texas in him coming out here. That's a Texas justice coming out right there.
On the cusp.
Right on the cusp. Because like even me growing up, like, I'm not sure if we talked about this in another cast. We may have not, or just you and I personally talking. Yeah. But there's been like times in my life where I was not hit often, but the times that I was hit, deservedly so. And you look back at it and you're like, you're thankful for those, and it wasn't even like my brothers, shout out to my bros, like they gave me some good bruises when I deserved it, sometimes undeservedly so, and I'm working through that in my own personal therapy. But there have been times where I've been, like a good smack in the back of the head, Blake.
Yeah.
It'll do you.
Yeah.
It'll do you. We've got a lot of kids around this complex, and let me just tell you, they've never been smacked. They scream unruly, and then you hear the mom's like,
don't do that,
Jason, what's going on? And you're just like, you're talking to them like they're your peer. And I'm like, sometimes you gotta, just
show them who's boss.
It's like, what'd you say, Hand? What'd you say? You want to talk to the kid? And I'm not advocating for that by any means, but they need to know that there's an alternative to reasoning, and don't use that exclusively. I feel like for me, the threat of that being there was always enough to keep me in line. And then also, I never like getting in trouble. Like, just like I hate that feeling in the pit of your stomach, like you're called into the principal's office. Like I never had a stomach.
A lot of people,
crime.
I think a lot of people lost that shame.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
like, it's not like not being prideful. It's like having no shame.
Yeah,
different topic.
Like,
but
remorse, for your actions. And social media, it's poisoned every aspect of our lives.
Yeah. Like when you do something crappy, like at work or something, you should feel bad, and hopefully everybody around you like gives you the stink eye and like.
Well, shame, that's something I feel like, because we are communal creatures, I feel like shame is something built into our evolutionary code to kind of be like, no, that's not right. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And the people that don't feel shame are like sociopaths, and psychopaths.
Yeah. But also I think it's encouraged to not have shame, and that's weird.
Yeah.
Like, in today's society. Anyway, different topic.
But the tangents keep on coming.
Yeah, they keep on coming. They will come again.
They will.
Yeah.
They will. Just like making a baby.
We'll also just kind of go into, like, there was an interesting small baby boom after COVID.
Yes.
So like when COVID happened, like birth rates fell off like a cliff.
Of course.
And they've actually been kind of declining since I think like the 70s ish, but they've fallen off a cliff in COVID, but then obviously right after COVID is like boop, right back up.
Yep.
But it is interesting to see also there's been an overall drop in birth rates. So do you want to just kind of go over both the baby boom and the drop in birth rates in general? Like, what's your hypothesis of why?
I think that just like after World War II, where we did see the baby boomers, people were like, wow, life is so fragile, and I haven't seen my husband in 3 years.
Yeah.
And we just gotta do it for God, really.
For God.
just
for God and country.
We got for God and for country. We got to celebrate our victory.
Yeah.
They were dropping bombs. We're dropping something else.
Yep.
And it's not the stork doing the dropping.
No.
If you catch my drift. And I think that in times of crises that people really come to, say, wow, life is so fragile, it's so delicate. What's better than putting another soul into this turbulent world?
Yes.
But I think that it's kind of like fight or flight, dude. It's like for some people it's and we're going to get into this, but for some people it's like they see the world around them and they're like, I don't want to bring a kid into it. But then there's other people like, wow, the world could end any moment. We need to bring kids into it so that we can enjoy every aspect of it. Is it a little selfish? Sometimes, right? It could, if it's for a selfish reason that you're having a kid, you shouldn't be having a kid. It should be, I think, a little bit of selfishness, because obviously everyone wants to see,
bit of pride.
Right, for sure.
It's like my family name.
It's exactly, you want to pass that on.
Yeah.
But you also, if you can give the kid a life that was better than the one that you had, I think that's a beautiful thing. It's an opportunity that otherwise would not be had by that soul, that spirit.
Yeah.
So I do think it's that fight or flight, and which one are you going to be in this turbulent time? There's always been turbulent times, dude. You can't. I'm serious. If you look back at stuff, this is the most stable shit has been. But with that all
historically,
like people in 1960s, any moment a nuke could go off. Kids were doing nuke drills. They were like, if you get under your desk, you'll survive this atomic blast. Don't worry about it. There's lead-lined desks, and that's all you need, But that's my theory on it, Blake. Overall, I think I touched on the boom. What do you think is responsible for the bust overall?
Yeah, I think this kind of harkens back to the first podcast. Like, just first off, it's harder to have children when you have less testosterone in men. So I'd say that's probably a small part. It's just harder to just happen. So let's say people are not even planning on having babies. If they're both less potent, then when they make a mistake or not or whatever, they potentially won't have that baby at the end of that mistake. So what I'm trying to say is that's one thing.
True.
Two, there is social media, not only social media, but just general consensus for some reason to have the concept of not having children, not bringing them into this world. I've always kind of thought that's like a cop-out for some other reason why you don't want children. I do believe that there are people who don't want children, but I also believe that when people say that, I'm 90% skeptical, as I don't believe you.
It's ulterior motives.
Yeah, I don't believe that reason. There's something else, and that's fine, but don't lie. Bringing children into this world, come on. I mean, there's so many people out there in this world that are having relatively not great lives, but if you ask them, oh, do you just want to end it? They'll be like, no.
True.
I mean, I might be homeless, but I still want to live.
They're like, what'll get you out of a homeless unlucky streak? Having a kid.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it.
More. No, and yes, you don't want to bring a child into crappy situations, but I mean, that's also just allowing someone to get away with their hedonism. I think is that you say, or they're like, oh, I don't want to bring a child into this mess. It's like, okay, but you're also living in your mom's basement and you're 37 and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I think what really you don't want to do is you don't want to grow up. You don't want to be responsible. You don't want to have a nice paying job to be able to take care of all that stuff.
True.
And I have those urges too. I don't want to do that either sometimes, but I mean I do, but sometimes I'm just I want to be in that basement just playing video games. I get that, but we got to get there,
It's and it is the lack of testosterone for sure.
Yeah.
And I remember when Blake was talking about it, I was like, I always looked at testosterone as like me men. me hunt, me have child.
For
and
sure.
It's, like there is that component, but at the same time, testosterone, like you were saying, Blake, is more so a driving force in getting us to get out of bed in the morning, have goals, have ambitions, and the self-esteem necessary. Chop wood. No, dude, but for real, like that literally, it was like you woke up in the morning hungry, you woke up in the morning cold, and it's like, I don't like hungry, I don't like cold. I will address both of those things now.
Right
and then
now.
once you get not hungry and not cold, then you're like, okay, those things, that my basic needs are met.
Yeah.
Now let's bring more children in here to help me chop more wood and get more food.
Yes.
And that's why you had, my grandfather was one of like 10 kids, dude.
Yeah.
I think 2 of those kids reached adulthood. Like, statistically speaking, terrible odds.
Yeah.
But and that begs the question, is if you didn't have 10 mouths to feed, I'm just saying here, if you didn't have 10 mouths to feed, because you're like going for a numbers game, and you're like, okay, let me have as many kids as possible. But if you have 10 kids, how much food allocation can you give each of those kids?
Yeah.
The quality of life, it's got to go down when you're sharing, did anyone have shoes?
Yeah.
I'm sure my grandfather like grew up, without running water.
Yeah.
Like, and electricity. Bro, I just can't wrap my head around that, and you're living off the land. And this ain't 1740. This
They had
is,
wells, though.
this is, they did have wells.
Yeah.
But still, if you didn't have 10 kids to help you transport, that water back and forth, but you wouldn't need that much water if you didn't have 10 kids. So that's what it's like a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, but we also, every set of hands is more productivity, so you can get more, so Sarah gets the water and
it's kind
Jim
of like
Bob gets the food,
It's an investment though, because
Yeah.
you got to get them. You got to get them to like 6.
yeah, for
and
sure.
then at that point, there's a return on your investment. But
Yeah.
those first 6 years are rough. You're just, and the poor women. The women, it's not like they were housewives. They would give birth in the fields. They'd go and they
Yep.
rip off the placenta.
Yep.
And they would save that for the stew later tonight.
Oh, hell yeah.
And drop in some veggies, and you're eating good that night.
Yummy.
They needed that sustenance just to breastfeed. It's we were humans were amazing, and now we're just dependent on whatever formula that they've manufactured for us. But wow, we've really jumped off a tangent there, didn't we? Maybe just a little bit. But I just think it's important to look at that. And now maybe Blake's grandparents were a little bit different. They weren't from the fields of Greece. Blake's grandparents worked at your local burger shack, which I will shout out. I actually was driving recently, and I did see an actual burger shack.
Yeah.
And it exists. So I think we might have to stop advertising for it, because we might just, if we get big enough.
I think we'll advertise harder, and then
Really?
Yeah, then they'll start paying us.
What if they don't agree with what we're saying though?
I don't
And then
care. I mean,
we're going to be sending.
how would they not agree? We're
shouting them out.
We're perfect.
But we're talking about the diarrhea that comes after it with this, like.
Yeah, but it cleans out your system. You know what I mean?
It's like a cleanse.
Yeah.
Burger Shack cleanse.
Yes. The Burger Shack diet.
That's it. That's like the South Beach.
It's like the
diet.
juice cleanse, but burgers.
But you enjoy it when you actually eat
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
But your grandparents, Blake. So, that type of, they were from Texas.
Yeah, Central Texas, and they lived to like 93 and 99. So they were born in
the 30s.
20s.
20s. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So they were born in the 20s, and so they went through the Great Depression.
For sure.
Right in there.
Right.
But they were both from farmland,
Gotcha.
and they in later life like had city jobs, if you will. But she was a hairstylist, and he was a furniture salesman. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
But yeah, no, they grew up on just the straight land, so they had to farm and get their water from a well and all that jazz.
How many kids did they have?
How many kids? Well, they only had 2 kids.
Okay.
But I don't remember how many siblings they had.
Okay.
But anyways, my father, he had 6 brothers and sisters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
that's a good amount.
But anyways, just kind of going back to like what you're talking about, like with 6 brothers and sisters and 10 kids and all that, like how much money do you think someone would have to make to have 10 kids today? You know what I mean?
You got to be a politician.
You just had random farmers having 10 kids, right? Back in the day. how did they make it? Like, that's interesting.
I mean,
right?
because it was sustenance farming at that point.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, you just live off of what you grow.
You didn't really need dollars.
But what I'm saying is like, even today, though, like, even if you were a farmer in 2023, having 10 kids is still more expensive than it would have been back in the day. So, not to get into all straight finances and politics, but it's interesting to see how it's not even like, I want 10 kids, but people don't do that anymore. There's a reason why people don't do that anymore. It's because it's too expensive. Like, you don't want to have 4 children generally because you don't have one child sometimes because it's too expensive. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about in this podcast beforehand was that I personally know some people, but we just know people that they don't want children, but it's not even for any other reason other than the fact that they just don't want to deal with the cost, which is insane if to think about. Because if, let's say, everybody was making twice as much money, which I know sounds crazy, but just
humor him.
Yeah, humor me. If you look at income to price ratios 50 years ago and even 70 years ago and even during the Great Depression, our salaries or incomes were enough to buy a lot more than today. So, like, let's say that we had the same buying power that we did, like, 70 years ago. If we did, I think there'd be a lot more children in this world.
Of course.
For sure. So it's interesting to bring that up because we talk about the global trend of fallen birth rates. Well, that's probably the easiest and most recognizable reason as to why there's not as many children in this world is because everything is more expensive. Yeah. And so why am I going to bring a baby in if it's like 20,000 from the start? You know what I mean?
For sure. And that is, like, I think the main crux of our argument is that financial constraints is definitely the number one reason. But number two, I think that, social media, just like everything else, has just poisoned every aspect of our life. Like a metastatic cancer. It is the worst thing that's ever, like, we've ever produced, in my opinion, personally. And there's just fear mongering, and then you just see, like, articles posted on, like, TikTok, and you get like a 15-second snippet, and it's like, have you seen this new thing? And it's like somebody's face with, like, an article just, like, floating, because that's how they edit everything for today's
I think what's most interesting, and this is probably honestly we should just do a podcast about social media just in general.
Oh, we're going to.
But I think one of the most interesting things about social media is that you have people of importance or people of power who are looking at social media and thinking that is the trend, when in reality, like, 90% of Americans don't even use social media, like, in a real sense. Like, they don't post, they might have something, but they're not, like, active on it. So what I'm saying is like, you're looking at 10% of the population who apparently love to post stuff, and then people of power are like, oh, this is obviously the trend. Like, no, it's not. Americans just go to work, get coffee, and work, and then go home. Like,
we got bills. We can't pay attention to this nonsense.
But anyways, just a little tangent there. It's interesting that we have that has such a influence on us when it's really not that many of the people who are influencing us.
Well, that's why they're called influencers.
Right.
Right. Influencers. Influenza?
Yeah. Similarity?
Similar, infectious. Going viral.
Yes.
It's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
But no, for real, dude. I feel like bad shit has always happened in the history of mankind.
Yeah, way worse stuff has happened in the history of mankind.
And for the longest, like, it's easy to get caught into a vacuum when you're on Twitter and Reddit and whatever social media, the IG, if you will, all of these different types of things that you look at on a daily basis. It's easy to see the world as a miserable, horrible place where atrocities are happening every day, but they've always been. Now it's just fed to you through a tiny freaking screen or a big screen at every moment, and it's easy to get overwhelmed by it. And I think that's why mental health has taken such a hit, is just because we're just inundated with all the negative stuff that happens in a given day. But if you go out, dude, and you like literally just go interact with people, don't, like, I mean, sometimes you'll get punched in the face for trying to initiate a conversation in a park, but because that's what social media has done to us. It's made us so kind of like agoraphobic.
Isolated.
Yeah, ironically, we're interconnected with everyone, but we've never been more isolated.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've kind of really jumped on the social media podcast train here. But I think that it's important to note that that's also why we're more hesitant to have children now.
Yeah.
Is because we're just faced with all the misfortune. We don't want to bring kids into that, misfortune themselves. And people are like, it's selfish to bring kids. But again, if you can teach your kids somehow to stay off an iPad before they're hitting puberty, which is again going to be impossible. But I'm saying if you can, make them understand that the world is good out there. There is good to be done. And I look at having a kid, and we'll talk about this in the personal part of it, but I look at a kid as a challenge to not only, your relationship with your spouse, but a challenge to yourself to try and get this kid as well-rounded as you can as possible. I think if you could do that, there's a reason why our parents, they look at us. I'm not just saying like us, but look at their kids. And when they raise a good kid, there's no better compliment that you get than it's like, yo, you've got a good kid, dude.
Yeah.
And that's a reflection on you, Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. The kid could be like a really good kid from the get. Like, this kid never cries. Kid does his homework. Like, like I'm on autopilot. I'm not even doing anything with the kid.
Yeah.
But there are people that work hard at breeding good habits into their kids. If you're wealthy, don't, like, my plan, and I say this to my wife all the time. I'm like, my plan is to not pay for our kids' loans, and I'm saying, or we'll loan them the money interest free, but the minute you graduate and get a job, you're paying me back a set rate every month. I don't want you paying interest on stuff that you don't need to, because I've paid a lot of interest in my life.
Yeah.
And if I see that you're dedicated, you're driven, I'm going to teach you from a very early age. You want money to go out with your friends on a Friday? You're taking out the trash. You're helping cook dinner, and it's not going to be a job. It's going to be stuff that you just do because that's what being a human being is.
Yeah.
Right.
I think one of the most important things, having a child and then trying to teach them the way that they should be living life, is like one of the most important tenets, is maybe just starting off with things aren't important. Like things like this table, like these little products that we get, like, don't worry about that stuff. Worry about what education you're going to get, like how smart are you going to be, how, like, seriously, like that's more important than the things that you get. And like if you start off with that, hopefully a lot falls in line, because
the foundation,
because they're not going to be getting into stupid debt. It's okay to get in debt, but just don't get into stupid debt.
Yeah, debt with a purpose.
Yeah,
because that's our society. We need debt in order to build credit scores. And to afford more debt.
We both have debt for sure. Obviously, we're American.
It's exactly. It's cheeseburgers and debt.
Yes.
And football.
Yeah.
And the flag. I feel so patriotic right now. Any holidays coming up? No, we celebrated all the patriotic ones are just from May to September, and it's just basically the rest of the year it's darkness.
But also, so just kind of going off of like just regular financial constraints, but also there's a little bit of a class, or I should say, like there's a dichotomy between people who are having a lot of babies and people who are holding off on it.
Sure.
So, for instance, one of them is a more educated, or I should say institutioned, not institutionalized, but just, like they're from institutions. They kind of think, oh, well, I've heard all these stats and I've heard all these things from the media, that maybe we shouldn't have children. But then there's also people who don't hear those talking points and they just go straight to it at like 19 years old. So it's kind of interesting to see two different classes of people who are participating in having children and not having children. And you brought up a really good movie that I forgot about in terms of the children, is that there was a whole set of people who were not as smart, hence the movie called Idiocracy.
Idiocracy. And that's because that's not a word. That's the whole irony of it.
And and so the not that smart people were having children at like a ridiculous rate, and then the educated class were like, oh, we shouldn't have children.
I
want to wait until I have a better job and, everything's set up. And then they wouldn't have children. And then eventually they got outnumbered.
The Billy Bobs of the world would have 10 by the time that even if they were lucky, the other couple to have 1.
Yeah.
And over time, 10 beats 1, dude. It does. Every
no
time.
matter how smart you are.
It does, exactly.
But it is interesting because that is kind of happening where the more educated, I should say, the more college experienced someone is, the longer they are waiting.
Of course.
And that is interesting. What do you know why, or do you think, what do you think about that?
I 110% agree. As somebody who, took out loans and such to get college educated, and I'm lucky I was one of those people that found a job directly.
Afterwards.
Yeah, well, I mean, dude, when I was, originally I was like a bio major, and then like as a bio major, which is 98% of the school that I went to, everyone's like, I'm gonna be a doctor, and then you go to school and you're like, oh man, this is woof. I'm gonna need more money and more brain, and I was like, I can work on the brain. I was like, the money's tough though, but you get into a cycle of you have to kind of put yourself in debt in order to escalate to the next level, and I'm thankful that I did get an occupation that allowed me to make X amount of money that helped me hit that debt as hard and as fast as I did. But there's other people that go to liberal arts colleges and get a degree in philosophy, and it's like
basket weaving.
Well, basket weaving too, or the fine
underwater
arts.
Basket weaving too.
Underwater basket weaving
one.
is good. It's one of the most. I know that most people think pickleball is the most up and coming sport, but underwater basket weaving gets me hyped.
Yep.
I sweat watching it. Ironic for an underwater sport.
Yes.
Water polo's got nothing on it, but. So I think that those educated people, when you have a monthly bill that's $500 for your student loan payments, and $250 of that is just interest alone, it perpetuates this cycle of not allowing the educated to, or again, a little bit college educated, because I don't want to say educated. You don't have to go to college to be educated. Yeah. But the college experienced. The college experienced, that wisdom, because there is some type of wisdom that comes with going to college. I mean, you got to adult to some degree. Yeah. You learn some valuable life lessons.
Yeah, you're meeting a lot of people and going through a lot of social interactions and performing tasks. Of course.
Yeah, and you're taking on responsibility that you otherwise would not. You know, so I think all those things are good, but is it worth $100,000 in debt for a job that's going to make really you half of that? And just getting into it, like one last thing I will say about the student loans, because that's my opinion. That's what's keeping the college educated people from having children as quickly as possible. That's true. Is because they have more bills kind of just out the gate about it. I was going to say that if the federal government truly cared about having an educated, college educated set of, human beings in the society, then they wouldn't have interest rates at all on the loans. Like I do even 1% interest rate.
Yeah, just a low
just
interest rate,
something that say, hey, I'm going to make a little bit of money off of you getting educated, because listen, at the end of the day, like it's a business. This is capitalism. I get it. You got to make money off the next guy for any transaction that's performed. But like when you've got 4, 5, 6% just in federal, which I've had myself, and then private, forget about it, bro. You're going up to like double digits. You're going up to 12% from Sally Mae. I'm looking at you. No, we don't want to get a cease and desist. Nothing bad about Sally Mae. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that, Blake.
Yeah.
Whereas, the Billy Bobs of the world don't got that. It's like, I'm gonna join the US military.
Yeah.
And in the first paycheck I get, afford $250.
Like, I wish that a little bit of me thinks like, as long as it was with the right person, like literally like the person in which I'm with right now, my girlfriend, I wish that I had a baby already, like 10 years ago. That'd be great. 100%. But I mean, obviously there'd be some hardships that I would have gone through 10 years ago, especially with the debt that I had. Mm-hmm. But it'd be kind of nice to have like someone who's already done, like just looking at it, the prospect of having a child right now is like, dude, it's like I'm already getting tired. You know what I mean? Like, well, that's what sucks. Like 30, you don't think it's that old, but like, I think what happens is like you're basically Superman from like 20 to 29, and then 30 hits, and then you're like, oh snap! I actually get tired sometimes.
And that's when you double on the creatine. You double up on it. You got it. You got to stay puffy for the kids. The kids got to know that you're puffy.
But I mean, think about it. If I'm 33 right now, and if I have a child, by the time they're 15, I'll be 48.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the on the other side of that is that when you do have kids later in life, there's less pitfalls for them to go through because you have, and wisdom does not come with experience. You can experience anything, but
you got to learn from it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't learn from it, then it's just wasted, stupid. You just put yourself through pain for no reason.
Yeah.
Pain is necessary. It's absolutely necessary to get to that next level.
Yeah.
But if you're going through pain just repeatedly, I mean, that's a definition of insanity, right? If you're just doing the same shit, you're like, again, from the time you're a kid, you touch your hand to a hot stove. Stove is hot. I don't touch the stove because the stove is hot. But if you're just like, I like this stove.
Yeah,
and
that's called sadism.
It's masochism, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's like, but this stove is named Steve, and Steve is my pet, and we're gonna pet Steve the stove.
Steve the Sizzler.
Steve the Sizzler. But if you learn from that stuff, then your kids don't have to put their hand on the stove. You can tell them, yo, the stove is hot. Don't touch the stove. And that's my biggest thing is that shout out to my parents, did a great job with the best that they could, but with what they knew, and I don't want to put the whole burden on my wife and I to be like we're the cycle breakers. We're kind of the bridge generation, and I talk about this often.
Yeah.
Is that when you have parents that weren't exactly the most well versed holistically about stuff. Again, great people, hardworking people, but this is a different world we're living in now than they came up in. Back in the day, you put your money in a bank. That was the thing to do. You made some money on that money, and that's all you really had to do. Now, bro, if you don't have your bonds, diversify your bonds. Shout out Wu-Tang and Chappelle Show. But you really have to diversify your bonds, your portfolio. You have to have Roth IRAs. You have to have 401ks, the 403bs. There's so many things that school and college doesn't teach you that if you don't, I literally actually, Blake, I took out a book recently, and it's called A Simple Path to Wealth. Yeah. And it's not like a multi-level marketing, you can get rich quick too, just make all of your friends into your...
Just general ideas.
Just general things. The guy actually, the author, wrote the book for his daughter when his daughter was first born. And he was like, I just started making little things pitfalls that I fell into, things that worked for me. And I think one of the best things that he said is, just shout out to this book, is that never try and time the market. Because if you try and time the market, you're going to have a very bad taste in your mouth.
Yep.
Don't go for individual stocks because you put $10,000, you put your life savings, whatever, into that one stock, you might hit an apple. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But you might, we'll see with these bad events, wars. We'll see it with COVID. Things, the market goes down, it comes up. It goes down, it comes up. And he basically said this, ultimately, in the 40 years that he's been writing this book, because that's how long it took him to write it, because it's got all of his life experiences in it, he said that if you have to believe in the market with the same capacity that you believe in the country that the market is surrounding.
Sitting in.
So you're like, all right, do I believe in the U.S.?
Yeah.
It's like, if the only way the market ultimately crashes is if the U.S. crashes. And I'll tell you right now, I mean, it's a little turbulent time when it comes to that type of stuff, but by that same token, listen, if we've made it this far, I mean, is it really going to happen in our lifetime? I really hope not, guys. But so that's what I'm trying to say. It's that I want my kids to know these things. I want to impart this wisdom to them. And I don't think that having kids at an older age is necessarily a bad thing. You might be a little bit more tired.
Yeah.
But if you got more money because you have this wisdom to invest in, the kids, in theory, don't need you to be working 3 extra overtime shifts a month.
Yeah.
You have that money already. You don't need to work as hard. Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
That stupid cliche. But yeah, man. Speaking of the government, I think it's important for us to touch upon government regulation of population, something that Blake is very passionate about.
Oh no, I just think it's really funny. I think it's funny to, if you're gonna have a podcast about birth rates or just babies in general, I do think that we should probably look at the biggest elephant in the entire history of the world of a single entity messing with something so big or so fundamental to humanity, and that is China's one-child policy. just chef's kiss on stupidity. I can't really, I really can't say anything more.
When did they enact that?
This is like oh man, 60s, 70s.
Really?
Oh
that
yeah,
long
it's
ago.
been a long time.
Oh god,
man.
yeah, it's catching up.
Yeah,
it's catching up.
I want to say 70s. I should look it
okay.
up. But
it was after the good old Mao Zedong era.
Let's just say it lasted for far too long.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about what's happened now is their average age, their median age has been climbing dramatically ever since. Now, I think right before COVID or during COVID, they actually went ahead and went away with they went to a 2-child and then a 3-child, and I think they just went away with it. They're like, no, just have them, because like, guess what? Their median age is climbing like crazy. So if your median age is like 37, and there's like no new stock coming in, meaning babies, like that means eventually your median age is going to be 50, which is crazy, because at 50, I don't know if you know this, you're not as productive, like manual labor at least, as you were when you were 37 or even 33 or even 20. So what's interesting in China is that even though they're very heavy production, heavy manual labor there, that's going to be really hard to keep doing when the bulk of their people are 50 or 60.
I was going to say, those sweatshops are going to look,
like, let me put it this way.
Good.
What's really interesting, I started reading a book. It's it's the book of
you don't got to remember the name.
Okay, so basically in the book, it's fertility's dropped off 100%. Nobody can have babies.
Oh, Children of Men.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of Men.
Yes,
they made it to movie with Clive Owen.
Well, I watched the movie and then I'm like, I gotta read the book.
Yeah, it's a good book.
But what's interesting about it, just if you think about it right now, if everybody in the world decided, either voluntarily or involuntarily, to not have children, all like 7 billion of us would perish, obviously, and like within basically 60 years there'd be nobody left. Is that interesting?
I mean, it's kind of
when you crazy, when you
put it that way.
7 billion people could put. Whoop.
We're at 8 billion, but
whatever.
It's
so
remember when we were in school? It's like 6 billion people.
Yeah,
and it's like that's going up quick.
That's going up quick.
You know.
Anyways, I just think it's interesting, because when you're talking about birth rates and like on a global scale, literally, it's kind of scary if something happens to even just 5%, 10%, 1%. Like, it's crazy. So when a government does this, when they're like, let's just stop having so many. All right, well, you're gonna pay that price, China. Like, I don't know what the heck you were thinking. That's such one-dimensional thinking. Like, we have too many people. What do we do about it? Have less. Great.
But I think having one child is like the ultimate shot on the foot. It's not just one shot on the foot. You're shooting both feet.
Yeah.
Because if you do, you only have one sex or the other, and it's just like you're automatically just dropping the chances of procreation, by half, right?
Yeah.
I think if it was a 2-child policy, like good old nuclear family, which as Blake and I have discussed prior to it, doesn't mean that you're creating a family near a nuclear plant.
That's what, that's what we thought. We looked it up, though.
Yes, we looked it up, and we personally thought it was uranium-enriched children.
Babies,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, we had a glowing rock, and then we put it in the room when the baby was conceived. It's that is the traditional definition, and then we came to discover that it is not weapons grade.
I was
babies.
pretty disappointed too.
I mean, think about it. It would be pretty cool. Glowing green babies.
Yeah.
Just whoom, whoom, whoom. Just like the baby's crying again. It's like I can't hear it over the whooms.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I think that yes, China is now seeing the repercussions of its actions.
Well, it's also interesting too, because it wasn't just that people would have one baby and that's it. It was that they would accidentally have more, and then what do you do with that second one? Literally, like, they would literally kill them or sell them.
No.
Yeah, of course.
It was like a Sparta, like ancient Sparta, when the baby wasn't strong enough that they would just kick it. They're like,
that's what they did.
This baby's not latching to
that
this nipple.
Too, and then also the sex is important, because if you have a daughter, I mean, how effective is a daughter in China? You can marry her off, but what if she's not that great? So what happened is they had too many. So then they would have a daughter, by accident or whatever, and then they just throw that one away, then try again for a male.
The way that he's saying throw it away, I know we get really sarcastic here, but
no, I'm not. Yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah, they killed so many daughters were dead.
No.
Yes.
I'm just as concerned as you guys are right now. Just looking at home right now.
I'm serious.
There's a moment of
there's too many men in China right now.
Really?
There's not enough. Like, why is that? Because they killed the daughters.
I would like to think they got.
They sold them off too.
I would like to think they got Angelina Jolie'd.
Yeah,
like
that's actually,
everyone went to
that is
multi-millionaire,
mm-hmm.
Celebrities in America.
They would do that too.
Sleeper cells, really.
Yeah.
Sleeper cell agents. That's kind of insane.
Yeah, it is insane. Right?
I highly implore you guys to look up what happened to that, because I'm going to do the same after we finish recording this, because that's just dark. I'm
not saying it's like
he's not
50% of the time, or I'm just saying that there were definitely people who threw their babies away.
Well, I'm sure that in some, of the billion people, 2 billion people that live there,
yes.
At one point or another,
but it was more than 5. it was more than a handful.
Oh,
it was a lot.
That is just sad.
I don't know the numbers on it. China doesn't even know the numbers on it.
Oh my god!
But if you look at the actual percentage of males versus females,
I've seen that. I've seen that.
Where did they go?
And
they didn't all just get sold to another country.
But I also feel like women are more valuable, and I'm saying from that perspective, just because you need a woman to make a child.
Yeah.
So I understand you need both, but at the same time, I think one's a little bit more important than the other when it comes to the baby making process.
Well, what's interesting is the experiment. It's not literally an experiment, but the thought process of if society was reduced down to 100 people and it was 1 woman and 99 men, maybe we'll make it, but it's going to be a very slow process. But if you have 99 women and 1 man, you'll be fine. You can repopulate the world real fast.
That's what I'm,
so men are important. Yes. Obviously we need them to be, but women are more important when it comes to the process.
I love and respect women. I just want the people at home to know that. God bless you guys. And I say this to my wife all the time, because I think this is a great time to maybe insert a little bit of comedy into this very dark
turn, huh?
Dark turn on this podcast. Yeah. Leave it to China to kind of make us go down that route.
There's really no good. Yeah,
it's nothing good. Nothing good.
At least in the past 50 years, China has been very upsetting to all podcasts.
It's been, universally, but getting into that, talking about personal plans and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm gonna not throw my daughter away.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Number one, I think that there's been a huge explosion in terms of girl dad advocates, and I think that personally, as a guy, you're just like, oh, I want a son and blah blah blah. I want to play sports with him and stuff like that. And I have a niece. Shout out to my niece, love you. And as does Blake, and just there's something about that dynamic, that relationship, the innocence. I absolutely would love to be a girl dad. Not to say that I don't want to be a boy dad too. I would love to do 1 and 1, and just you get the whole package. There's a self-imposed 2-child policy in this household. But then again, if you get 2 of the same sex and you go for number 3, you might be just 3 out of 3 one sex, and it's tough when you do that. I'm one of 3 of 3, and it's a house full of boys just like a house full of girls. It's sometimes you need a little bit of testosterone, you need a little bit of estrogen just to balance the scales there.
I have a feeling for myself that I'm gonna have 3 daughters. I think I just feel it.
You feel it?
Yeah. No evidence, obviously. I just feel it.
Well,
I feel like I'm gonna be outnumbered in my own household.
Well,
hard.
That's why.
So bad that I'll potentially ask one to get a sex change.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Another dark turn. It's Blakey dark turns over here. Just dark turn.
That's the way that you do it, though. Just equal out equal it out.
I know that you guys are on your toes at home, but he even surprises me. He really keeps me on my toes. And I think that a great way to balance the scales, besides invasive surgery, is is fur babies. I think it's something
I
that,
suppose.
I mean, it's something that you'll see like a dad that's like, he's got like 5 daughters, and he's like, we ain't getting no dog. I ain't getting no dog. I'm done with the process. And then it's just immediately gets a male dog. And all of a sudden, not that things were bad before, but it's just like, you need that little, that bromance, that relationship.
I had a bromance with Zig, or our old dog, R.I.P. Ziggy.
R.I.P. Ziggs.
So when I met my girlfriend, she had that dog for years, like 7 years before me. No, longer. And so then I just come along. We start living together. And then guess who's following Blake around all the time?
That's it.
That's right, Ziggy.
And he grew up in a household
like 2
of
months.
women.
Yeah, with like 2 months, he was like, I like this guy. I'm gonna follow him everywhere.
It's just
so like I would walk over there, and then then my girlfriend would walk somewhere else. He would follow me.
That's it.
It was great.
That's the type of
the bromance
relationship that I feel like you can supplement it with. And I feel like just Americans in general, you look at the pet owning statistics, babies going down steadily, but fur babies going up rapidly.
Yes. Interestingly enough.
And I mean they do procreate a lot more quickly than we do, and there's no China can't tell them what to do.
Yeah.
They're having babies whether or not China doesn't want them to. And they're chucking them just as quickly. Shout out Blake. But it looks like
I didn't do it.
I didn't throw it away. I didn't Spartan kick the weak ones.
Yeah.
They did that in Sparta though. That actually happened. That was documented. If you were weak, feeble,
got a cold a week.
It's if you didn't latch immediately, you got catapulted out the back door. But just personally, I feel like dogs are great, and cats and all types of furry friends, fur babies, whatever you want to call them, depending on where you're from in the country. You say fur baby down south, I think you're gonna be met with a couple of rude comments. Yeah, Blake?
Sasquatch,
not Pacific Northwest. But just personally, I definitely felt some heat. Recently saw some family that were all popping out the babies, and it's just something that like it was like you see all this clothing right here, we passed it from one baby to the next baby, and if this clothing goes without a baby encompassing it within a year, it's what are you doing?
What are you doing?
These clothes that need to be continuously filled with tiny little babies.
Yes, you need to create a life form so that the clothes can go somewhere.
It's selfish of the clothes.
Yeah.
And again, my wife right now is in school, God bless her, she's working very hard, and just the amount of heat that I got this, recently about it is kind of overwhelming. It's overwhelming, and it kind of gets turned on me, and it's like, well, we're on Pete's timeline. It's Pete's timeline. I'm like, am I in school right now? I'm like, I'm trying to let you guys understand the dynamics. I'm like, I'm trying to check off the boxes, and then you got the counter argument. Blake. It's like
no good time.
You plan and God laughs, and it's like, why do you got to take it to that level? And it's like you don't know if you'll be able to have a child when you're ready to have a child.
True.
And I'm like, I get it, I understand it, but that's not a good reason to just go into the next room and get it on. YOLO. But I really, like I was saying before, I'm trying to check off the boxes. I'm not going to check off every box. I'm not, and it's stupid of me to think so.
Live on the edge.
But
crazy.
I just like Blake said to me, I've been with my wife now coming up on a decade. It's taken a lot of self-control and responsibility, on my end and both of our ends, to ensure that we check off as many boxes as we can prior to that point. And my goal, Blake, is, like, God willing, she's done with school before she's 30, and then right there at 30 years old, not a bad time to get started in the game. Like at that point, I hope I have the wisdom and the energy to kind of, what's the word? Kind of reach that perfect point where everything kind of comes together.
Crescendo.
There you go. Or a convalescent.
Convalescing would be someone injured. So That's probably not
Is
it.
it?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Convene.
Cut that.
We're not cutting.
We're not cutting anything. He's got no time to cut.
We talked about throwing daughters away. So
if that makes the cut, then
we can't talk about anything else.
We can't cut a vocab mess up.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, for like and I just felt that heat this weekend, and I was like, you guys got babies everywhere. I was like, why don't we get these babies walking? You know, maybe we get these babies eating solid foods. You know, and then we talk about the other babies coming down the road.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about that.
I think more importantly, the real question is that are we, you and I, gonna time it right? Are we gonna have the same exact time?
I mean, we can.
Like, you gotta let me know. When you drop it.
When I drop the album. When I drop the album, baby.
So then I'll be like, all right, I'll get going.
All right, I'm doing it too. You know, that's another nice thing too. It is like, it's kind of infectious in the sense that you're like, well, I want our babies to grow up together, to be on the same soccer team.
That actually, no, for real.
I'm completely serious. And then it's like, you go a step further. It's like, my baby's gonna make babies with your babies.
Do you want to know like how much pressure Ashley felt whenever her cousin had a baby? She was like, when are you Blake gonna have a baby? Like right away. And like,
immediately.
Like, we're not even married yet. Like, come on.
That's what I'm saying, man. There's boxes to check.
And so then, but we're like, well, my little one's not gonna have anybody to play with. It's like, there's nobody else in the world. There's nobody else in the world. And
not only that, it's like, what, did everything stop working for you? Make number two.
Make another one.
Make another one.
Yeah.
Baby part 2, Duix. You know, so Blake, I mean, you've felt the heat too. I felt the heat, you know, and I just want the viewers at home, because you know who you are. It's not for lack of wanting. It's a substantial want. Yeah. There's nothing to me more rewarding than having a child. And I look at, just like Blake was saying, look at my spouse, and there's not a single person in this world I would ever want to have a child with besides her. And that's a shout out to my wife. You're an incredible person. And I always say it to, I'm like, it'd be incredible to love someone as much as you do, and then share a human person that is half of you and half of them is an absolute blessing. And you know, I think that we're lucky to be in a situation where we have that opportunity, because there's people, and I think about it, it's like you have a one night stand and then you get pregnant with that person, and it's a stranger baby.
Yeah, then it's like a 70-year stand.
There you go. It's a very long stand. But it's also, I can't
stand that long either.
But do you? And now that begs the question, like, do you feel a little bit differently about that child? Does that child receive less love innately because you haven't formed a bond with the person that you made it with?
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I
wouldn't know.
I pray that we
Thank
never
God.
know.
Yeah.
You know, but
although I do know that like one day, like I think around like 25, I started saying dad jokes. So I might be a dad and I don't even know it. You know what I mean? There's solid evidence. Clearly,
my younger sister-in-laws, they said that I've been dad joking a little bit too much too,
right.
and
you don't even know.
I have an urge to buy New Balances. And
did you go and get a pregnancy test for her?
Whoa!
I mean, that's what you would do though if you start saying dad jokes and start wearing New Balances. Like, you should probably just go and check.
I mean, the ultimate pregnancy test comes once a month, right? You know, like, so I mean, you don't necessarily need to, but you know.
I'm just saying, I think you need to be like on your driver's license, it has to say father if you want to buy New Balances.
That actually is a great point. Although New Balance has rebranded themselves. Shout out to New Balance. You guys have rebranded yourselves very well as a like athleisure type of thing. You guys have really made a comeback with that, and I got to give credit where credit's due. And
I think that's where we should end it, is New Balances.
New Balances. Yeah. Find a New Balance in your life.
No, but is there anything more to add? I think we really, honestly, we went on a lot of tangents with this one, but it's because there's a lot going on when it comes to baby making
and starting a family. Yeah, you know, you should think about things before you do it, and you know, and like I said,
solid advice.
You'll never check off all of the boxes, but have boxes to check off, not just for yourselves to make things a little bit less crazy when that time does come, that blessing does come, but for your child in the future and your family in the future to be a little bit more set up for that giant undertaking. I think the fact that we're even checking off boxes, Blake, is a testament to how much we do value that opportunity and that challenge. Yeah, people that just do it for the sake of doing it. And
they're just throwing boxes away.
That's what I'm saying. Dropping boxes and other things.
Like, they have goals in life and they're like, I got a baby coming.
Yeah, well, you know, when the baby comes, that's when I'll address all the issues in my life.
And that will happen to us, obviously, but...
Of course, but try and address the issues now too, because it's not easy when a baby's screaming at you. Listen, we've taken some twisting turns in this podcast. It's definitely caught me off guard. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just glad that we didn't have to go into the baby making. Demo yet.
Yeah, we're recording that after this.
Yes.
But as always, guys, if you like it. If you love it, subscribe it. And I think this is podcast number 7 or 8. Which one?
Somewhere between 1 and 1,000.
Somewhere between 1 and 1,000.
Yeah.
Still no comments. I hate you people.
Yep.
I'm joking. I love you guys. Please keep watching. We're doing it for your entertainment, our therapy, and everything in between. But yeah, I'm about to sign off. As always, I've been Pete.
And I've been Blake.
See you next week, folks.
Adios.